if 1/2 of 1/5 of a number is 2/3 of 3/5, what is the number? Well, all right. That sure sounded weird, right? But we're just going to take this question word for word and just translate it into an equation we can solve, okay? Whereas we're going to let x equal a certain number. Now, if x equals a certain number, let's read it again. If 1/2 of 1/2 of a number, if 1/2 of means multiplication, 1/5 of a number equals, is stands for equals, 2/3 of 3/5. What is the number? Well, okay, there we go. Now, how do we solve this? All right, this shouldn't be too bad. 1/2 times 1/5 would be 1/10, right? 1/10x equals 2/3 times 3/5. Well, we can first, let's do some cross canceling. Look diagonal, they have the same factors. That becomes 1, that becomes 1. Because you divide each by 3. So we have 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 5 is 5. Equals 2/5. Now, all right, how do we solve this? Well, we're going to divide both sides by 1/10, but remember, when you divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. So, we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal here, 10/1. All right, and so that's going to get rid of this. We're just left with x equals 2/5 times 10/1. Well, 5 and 10 have a common factor of 5, so we got 2 times 2 is 4/1. X equals 4. Okay. That was fun. What is the domain of f of x equals radical x plus 4 all over x minus 12? So when it's asking us these questions about the domain, the first thing you want to look for is if there's a variable in a denominator in the function, and if there's a variable under a radical sign. Because as we know, the denominator can't equal what? 0, because unfortunately, I know, we can't divide by 0. And if you remember, what's under a radical can't be negative, because we can't take the square root of a negative number. That's just the square root. If that was the cube root, we could, but that's just square root. So, okay, first of all, what we want to do, since there's a variable in the denominator, where you take the denominator, x minus 12, and all we do is we set it equal to 0 and solve. Plus 12 x equals 12. Or should I say x cannot equal 12? Okay. So we've got that one. Now, let's deal with what's under the radical. Remember, as I said, whatever ends up being under the radical cannot be negative. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take x plus 4 and we're going to set it greater than or equal to 0. Because it could be 0, because the square root of 0 would just be 0. So we need to know what x can be that would make it greater than or equal to 0. So, okay. I'm going to subtract 4 to both sides. And get x greater than or equal to -4. So, all right. That's our final answer then. So, x cannot equal 12, and x has to be greater than or equal to -4. There we go. That's it. What is the graph of absolute value of m plus 3 is greater than or equal to 5? So right here, we have a fairly basic absolute value inequality. But a lot of times, these are what students forget when they're taking the test. They haven't done this in forever, even though this is basic, just because it's a little tricky. So the first thing you want to do is isolate the absolute value. So to do that, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So we're going to have absolute value of m is greater than or equal to 2. All right, now here's the part most people forget. What you want to do is make 2 separate inequalities. You want on one side, okay, remember that. On one side, you're going to drop the absolute value on both of those. You're going to drop the absolute value and just keep it the rest the same for one. My goodness. You're going to have m greater than or equal to 2. Okay? That's the same. We just dropped the absolute value. Okay? But you're also going to drop the absolute value and take the opposite of what's on the other side of the inequality and flip the sign. So we're also going to have m flip this less than or equal to, take the opposite of what's on the other side, -2. And I know that sounds kind of like convoluted. Maybe there's an easier way to say it. But once you've done it a few times, then it's pretty easy. So, okay, we have 2 separate equations here, and we just have to graph them on the number line. So let's draw our number line here. Zero. So we need to label -2 and 2. So -2 and 2. All right, it's going to be a closed circle because they're both or equal to. And for the first one here, m is greater than or equal to 2. So or I'll just draw it above it here. That goes on. Or m is less than or equal to -2. Okay, there's -2, less than or equal to. There you go. So you would just pick the graph that looks like that one. And that's absolute value for you. Come on, guys. Thanks for watching, and hit the subscribe button, and we can all get good at math.